let's get started. So, yeah, remote work is here to stay. I actually wanted to start this webinar with a personal story that seems kind of weird, but I don't know. When I started working at a big company in 2018, I remember this recently because my mom brought it up to me that I had one of the perks was you had 2 days of working from home. And in 2018, at least in Buenos Aires, this was new and this was like a huge benefit that you had. And nobody had heard about it, or there was a myth that it was like 2 days you didn't really have to work, or you had to like actually work a lot more than when you were in the office, because people were constantly kind of looking if you were working or not, if your Microsoft Teams was on or not. But I remember that in 2018, remote work or working from home was like an anomaly, because when I told my friends, like, actually, I'm working from home 2 days a week, they were like, that's amazing. I want to work where you're working. And, 2020, so 2 years later, and now 5 years later from that, working from home is actually very normal. And I would say becoming the norm, or at least trying to, in many, many companies. And from that, actually, I came across when I was doing this a study done by McKinsey that was talking about, post COVID, how organizations were, detailing their vision for work, and if a hybrid, more flexible scheme was actually going to happen. And I was very pleasantly surprised that many, like 68% of the companies, didn't really know what plans that were going to be taking place after COVID and throughout these years, and how they were going to combine this remote work and on-site work. And I wanted to include this because they weren't talking about working from home, like they were actually talking about companies having people who work on premises and then having other people who work from remote locations, so from other cities, because we know post pandemic many people moved out of big cities and they didn't feel the need to move back, and the workforce is asking for this change because many of the things we do, they don't need us to be in office 5 days a week all the time. And so seeing that companies are taking this into account and they are saying like, hey, we know that we can't continue working the way we used to work before, and this is allowing a more flexible and more and a better work ethic and a better productivity, like we're about to see. And also it's changing the rules of the game so that companies now, like not big companies, smaller companies, are going to be able to grow their teams in ways that they haven't imagined before, and they're going to be able to do so in a way that's going to benefit them. So we don't have to stick to the status quo, like they said in High School Musical. We can make our own status quo, and we can make our own rules, and we could do what makes us better and what makes our business grow. And that's really exciting, and that's kind of what BetterPros is all about. But continuing on, um, what it kept saying in this study that actually surprised me, because all of this information I knew to be true, but having somebody actually vindicate it was really nice, is that actually productivity and customer satisfaction, I always struggle with that word, and employee engagement didn't go down in the years post COVID, or in the years of working from home and the remote revolution, as we call it. Actually, they were improved, or there was no change at all. So people felt as engaged, as productive, as satisfied when working from remotely as they felt when they were going to the office 5 times a week. There wasn't any actual real change, or there was a positive change, which is what we're looking for, positive changes. And so with all this information, companies saw that they didn't need to be in the same room to produce amazing results. They just needed what we're going to talk about today, which is clarity, trust, and the right systems in place. And because of this, in the same study, I saw that organizations have changed their hiring processes, and they don't know how that's going to look like. And that's where BetterPros comes in. But yeah, everything is changing. In last year, in 2024, and this year, we have seen that. We have seen that in big companies and smaller companies, how the way that they approach hiring talent and looking for talent, not only looking for people who are in your city, maybe in your state, but going globally, is a major trend that's going on right now. And of course, we know about it because of Better Pros, but it is something that's changing not only the way that professionals look for jobs and that apps like LinkedIn work, but it's also changing the way that people in companies in the US and in parts of Europe are looking for projects themselves and the way that they're trying to grow their businesses. And that's very important because we're moving away from what we know and moving into something that we don't know. And that's exciting because that's where we can set the rules and that's where we can grow and we can expand. So yeah, moving on. I'm going to talk a little bit about Better Pros. First, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee before it gets cold. But yeah, here at the Better Pros, we've been remote first since day one. We have always believed in the power of remote work. We are a fully remote company based in many, many places of the world. And what we do is that we connect top talent from Latin America, if you guys don't know about us, with amazing US companies, mainly in architecture, design, construction, engineering industry. And we vet about 1,000 professionals a month to create a great talent pool and to actually create matches that are long term and that matter. We don't just look for professionals and give you options. We hear out our clients. We see what they need. We want to be the change that we so desperately want to see. And I wanted to bring this example of somebody who's been working with us for a couple of years. I'm not going to disclose names or clients. So I know some people from our sales team are here right now. So do not worry. Um, but it's a beautiful story that I got via email last week about one of our professionals who actually has been working with a client for many, many years, about, I think they said 3 or 4. I might be misquoting, but it's been a long way. And this year they got to travel to meet them and to see kind of the projects that they had been working on from here, from Buenos Aires remotely. And they have created a beautiful relationship where one project, one remote project, one jumping in the pool and seeing what remote work is about, turned into, years of collaboration and amazing collaboration and friendship and companionship and partnership. And so that's what we're about. We're about long-term partnerships where we understand that, maybe the right fit for you isn't, like I said, in your city. It's maybe nowhere near you. And the idea that you can grow and expand your own business and you can grow and expand your own career if you're a professional in Latin America by just connecting with people from all around the world is just so basic, but so not basic at the same time. Now I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm forcing myself as I change the stages to take a sip of water so that I can not be talking so fast. Again, thank you for everyone who's joining. And don't worry that everything's going to be left on YouTube. We know the chat doesn't work. And I'm so sorry for that. But you can reach me on my socials again and we can keep chatting there. Again, I'm really sorry. I've done 1,000 of these and I have no idea how to fix it. And of course, it's going to happen when I have to do one. So we're moving into working with the world and what that means and the difference between working with the world and working from home, what I called in my initial story, working from home, because they're two different things. Um, like I said, remote work isn't just, working from home. It's opening yourself up to work with the world and to work with different time zones and to work with different people from different backgrounds and learning from that. It's a challenge, but it's also a great possibility to learn a lot and to become a better problem solver. So when you work across borders, like I like to say, I think, and this is in my experience working here at Better Pros, I've been here for about 2 years and I've had a lot of other international work experience. These are my top 3 skills that I think you need to take into account, which for some people might seem obvious, but I believe that these are things that we don't often actually sit down and think about or try to incorporate into our everyday lives, which are we should. The first one is adaptability, because you're going to need to adjust on both sides to different workflows, to different expectations, and you need to be a problem solver. If you were working across time zones, you need to be able to have that independence and to think quick, think on your feet, and actually bring solutions to the table, because most times you're not going to be working your 8 hours a day or however hours you're working with your team online, or with somebody that you can reach. So being able to access that adaptability is going to be what sets you apart from different candidates, and it's going to be what makes projects for clients actually grow and go the long haul and the long way. Also, I say curiosity, which is for me maybe the most important one, because it's where growth actually, I think, happens, and it's the key factor. So you need to be able to ask questions, not feel dumb about asking questions, to make things overly clear on both sides, and to understand, if you're a professional, what the client wants. If you're a client, you need to make yourself understood, and you also need to be curious about the person that's working from the other side of the world. Because I always say this story, and I think I'm probably going to repeat it at some point later. But you never know who the other person is. And sometimes the communication that might happen on site and in office is something that, where you learn so much about the other person and what they can do and what they love, and how that can contribute to your life and your projects and your career and your growth. And having that curiosity with somebody who's sitting across the screen from you is also important, because I would say sometimes you start working on a project with somebody, and because you wandered off, I love talking, so I always wander off speaking on other subjects. They might see that you're also great for another project that they're working on, or you can help them on another phase of their project, or you can help them with many different things. So being curious and actually listening to the person, is going to be a game changer, because again, you don't see maybe each other often, because as we're going to see, we don't need to over communicate in remote work. We don't need to be giving ourselves updates about every hour and everything we're doing, but we do need valuable time where we are connecting. And then the last one is empathy. I think there's a big myth, and everyone probably is with me, that if you're working remotely or if you're working from home, you're actually not working, which is false. It just means you're working differently. So sometimes deadlines might shift, or sometimes someone might not make it to the deadline. And it's important to recognize there's a human side to this collaboration, and things happen. And it's not because anyone doesn't want the project to go well, or the client moved the deadline because they just wanted earlier. It's about understanding that we're human, and that sometimes things will go wrong, and we need to put our human and our best foot forward and trust the other person. Um, so those are my three most valuable skills. And like I said, a global mindset is about seeing diversity and seeing the best major like amazing talent there is, and seeing that not as a barrier but as an advantage, because the most perspectives we have at the table, that's going to make us smarter and better. Like I said, we come from many years of just one type of work, and now that we're shifting into more hybrid and remote work, there are a lot of things that can change, and there's a lot of ways where like you can cater. If you're a person who has their own business, you can cater your business in a way that it's going to help you grow. Or if you're someone who's looking to grow their career, you can just you have access to so much that you didn't before. So it's just a win-win situation. And now, again, talking a little bit about Better Pros. At Better Pros, we teach our professionals that working with US clients means being three things. One is proactive, like I said, with adaptability. They need to anticipate needs and, not always wait for instructions. Of course, sometimes you maybe are not going to do everything right, but, being anticipating yourself and being proactive is what's going to take you further away in your career in any sense. Also, being reliable. I think that we need to respect when working in different time zones, you need to respect them. You need to respect deadlines and commitments. And something that I want to touch on is that your word when working in this kind of job is very important. So it's important to, again, be, like I'm going to say, communicative and share your process, but also it's important to share and be open and also be true with your word. So if you say, hey, I'm going to deliver this by said date, or hey, actually, I'm going to get you those documents that you need to work on by Friday, actually get them by Friday. Because when you work sometimes in person or on site, you can get around those days like, oh, I'm sorry, I get it to you by tomorrow. But when you are working across time zones and everything needs to be organized, your word is very dependent on the project, and it's very important that you stick to it. And I think we just in the last years let it slide as something that, okay, well, I can manage. But as we're going to see, um, working across time zones can be easy, but it also can be hard. So that is what makes it not hard and actually makes it easy. And yeah, I wanted to talk about again Better Pros, because we actually have what we call talent success managers, which are kind of bridges between our professionals and our clients, so that they both feel supported. And what they do is they set clarity and expectations. So, what a client can expect and what a professional is expecting. So, they both know what they're getting themselves into and they both are clear on the project. It's very, very important on our onboarding process to get clear expectations. Also, they help you resolve misunderstandings. As we're going to see, misunderstandings happen, they're normal, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just getting on top of them and solving them the best way possible. And for professionals, they also act as coaches. They meet with them. They understand what they want and what can help them grow their career. They support them and they help them because, again, I think one of the myths of remote work is that it might be a bit isolating. And when you have a team like Better Pros, you know that your VP is never actually going to be alone, and that they're going to be supported and that they can actually grow in their career. And it's not just about hiring somebody who's on the other side of the world. Next. So I don't know why I like to say next when I have another one coming. Having a global mindset, like I said, means seeing diversity not like as a barrier, but as a source of strength. And that's why with our mindset and at Better Pros, we have seen that with increased confidence in communication and problem solving, professionals become more confident. So as they grow in this remote revolution, they become more confident and they become better professionals. Also, broader professional networks span across continents, and you grow in ways you never imagined before, and projects actually grow in ways that one might never think of. If you're a company in the US, you might have never thought about taking projects in other sites of the world, but because you already are working with professionals in many other parts of the world, you also feel like you can open yourself to that. And it's all about openness, it's all about growth, and it's all about being the best professionals that we can. Also, we found that professionals have a deeper understanding of the global industry and trends and practices and this is amazing because they're able to kind of bring things from certain parts of certain projects from certain parts of the world or the US or different states to other projects that they're working on. And that kind of like ecosystem of feeding yourself from information and bringing it somewhere else is what makes growth happens. That's how we've always been growing. And again, it's not like this didn't happen before, but remote work allows for the barriers to come down and to actually bring more value to the table when you're working and having an interview or pitching a project, whatever it might be that you're here for. And then also, professionals found that opportunities for career advancement that wouldn't be were in their close proximity actually become existent, and so they don't need to just work locally. Like I said, many people have moved like post-COVID, post-pandemic, which seems like a long time ago, but also like yesterday, have moved cities, have moved lifestyles, have changed so many things. And they found in remote work that they can still grow in their career while not needing to be maybe somewhere where their career isn't thriving. Okay, now we're going into the next part, which might be my favorite part. I found out that I'm not as creative as I thought and that I'm more of an organization geek. This is my favorite phrase. Actually, structure is freedom. I discovered it whilst researching for this and planning this. And it's an oxymoron because structure is structure and freedom is freedom. But um, I found that it encapsulates so well the fact that for freedom, there needs to be structure. And we're going to see that in a minute. So remote productivity isn't about tracking your keystrokes and seeing how many hours and seeing if the person is on green or if they left their computer. It's not about that. Productivity is not a like it's not about that. And if you try to do that, you're going to get exhausted, you're going to get cranky, and the partnership is never going to work. But it's more about creating a structure and creating clear boundaries so that the partnership actually works. And I didn't come up. For some people, these things might be like, oh, yeah, I already thought about it. But implementing it, like I said, is a whole different thing. And many of us just kind of go with the flow until you actually have to think about this stuff. So these are the four key pillars of success that I found when creating a remote partnership. The first one is, like I mentioned before, clear expectations. You need to understand if your project is going to be working 9 to 5, or if the end goal of the project is something different. You need to be able to say, like, hey, this is what success looks like. This is what a finished project looks like. This is what a finished day of work looks like. These are your goals, and this is what I want you to achieve. Maybe it's a 9 to 5, maybe it isn't, but you need to set goals and expectations for that, because if not, you're going to fail. Because maybe one party thinks one thing, the other one thinks another thing. And if you don't communicate, that's just never going to work in any place of your life, but in your career. Then I want to talk about communication infrastructure. I think we all went through a phase, and I know the chat isn't working, and I'm bummed about that, but we all went through a phase where we tried every app there was for organization. You tried ClickUp, Notion, Trello, Google Spaces, Monday. I don't remember this. There's another one, but you probably tried them all. And the importance is that you need to start building trust and rapport. And you can do so by utilizing any of these tools that are available to us. If you like emails, if you're old school and you're like, hey, I like emails and phone calls. Or if you are kind of more modern and you're like, I want to use Notion and ClickUp or whatever, you need to make sure that everybody knows where to go to find what they need. And that's very important. And I think that we have often, I think there's an ad for ClickUp that says, today you're working in so many apps that it's disconnected. But yeah, it's true. We're working on so many different places that information gets disconnected. And when you don't have that, hey, I'm going to get out of my desk and go to the other desk and ask for this, you need to be able to be organized and clear about where you're going to work and how you're going to communicate. But with that, I want to talk about my motto, which is too many tools creates chaos. So you need to be aligned on the tools, like I said, that you're going to use. And I know that at the beginning, this might sound really tedious. I've done it myself, or my marketing team can say that we use ClickUp. I don't know if I should be saying which one we use, but it was very tedious at first, but now we have an amazing workflow going and everyone knows where to go for what. But for example, let me set an example. If you like emails, for EOD emails about updates, project updates. But hey, how do I reach you if I need to an answer right now, because not everyone's on top of their emails? Okay, you can use the Google Space Chat where you're still on the same tool, you're just using a different part of the tool. Or for example, if you use ClickUp, they also have a chat. Or if you use Notion, I don't know if they have a chat, they probably do. So sticking to one tool or to as little tools as you need is going to be key, because you need to be clear on, hey, I like update emails, I like update calls, I like daily calls, I like weekly calls. So all that needs to be set in stone and it needs to be over communicated, even though over communication is also a problem. And then the last one is about how culture is connection. So we encourage, as I said before, that you do not only work with your professional, but also have, a check-in on like, how are you? Because that goes a long way remotely. I don't know if any of you I don't know your ages, but if you had an internet friend, this is like having an internet friend. You need to ask them how they are. And by creating all that, you also get to know the person. And again, you can help each other out grow even more than what you initially thought. So if you initially have partnered with somebody for certain project, but in conversation, in chatting, in your weekly meetings, you find out that they are also interested, or they also are proficient in another thing that you are also working on. you can grow and expand. And those are things that sometimes we take for granted. We say, like, oh, this person is here to do this one thing. And with remote work, people can surprise you. So yeah, structure gives you freedom. Like I said, I know it's an oxymoron, but I like it. So when expectations are clear and we focus uh, our time, and our focus time is protected, you can work from everywhere and do your best work. And like the McKinsey kind of graph showed before, you can be more productive than if you go to your office. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee. I feel like I'm talking so much. It's really boring not having a chat or someone to say something. I see your claps and your hearts and all of that, but none of the comments that I know my team would be making. Um, so if you want to know, I thought it would be a great idea to say, like, okay, how does a schedule look like for someone who's working on Eastern Standard Time with someone who's working on PST? So how is that going to look like? Because we're on different time zones. There's a big time difference. Or maybe someone who's in Latin America who's working with a completely different European time zone. And you have like 4 or 5 hours of difference. And again, because this is customable, you can do whatever you want with this structure. But this isn't a clear example on how remote work, in my opinion, and that's why we're here, it can be actually beneficial to productivity. Because first things in the morning, what you're going to do is you're going to go over what you did on your previous day and any comments on that. You're going to check your day's priorities, and you're going to have to address any blockers that require help that were left from the day before. And then you're going to go into my favorite part, which is your protected focused block, which I know many of us don't get to have on our day to day, which is no meetings scheduled. So if you're an architect, if you're an engineer, you know that you need this kind of like 4 hours of just grinding and working. So it's no meetings, only asynchronous communication, and just time to implement your work and get things done. So with all this is async. So your team hasn't been online yet. So after this window, you're going to have a collaborative window where people are going to be responding to your updates, where you're going to get work sessions to review work, when you're going to get new tasks, when you're going to discuss projects, when, collaboration. You can actually get to talk to your team. If you like daily meetings, you can have your meetings. If you have daily emails, your emails, chat communication, whatever you decide to have. And then it's your EOD, it's your end of day, but maybe it's the middle of the day for somebody else. You're going to update your tasks. You're going to say, like, hey, these are my priorities for tomorrow. And then you're going to address any blockers that need to be resolved in order for you to continue to work. And hey, you're going to wake up the next day and those are going to be answered, and you're going to continue working. So you see, it's an amazing cycle where you don't need to be in constant communication. Again, if maybe there's a deadline coming soon, you're always going to maybe have to tweak this. It's not a one size fits all. The amazing thing about remote work is that it's not a one size fits all. But I think that this is a very clear example on how it can work across time zones. And it's not as hard as people make it seem. I think people make it seem like, oh, how am I going to make it work? And it's like, it's very doable, and it's actually very productive because you understand what times of days are going to be and days are going to be allocated to what and how you're going to communicate, because you're going to take the time, or your client's going to take the time to actually set a process. Okay, now we're getting into communication across international teams. Again, I feel like I'm speaking to myself. So I drink a glass of water, like a little bit of coffee, just to not speak so much. I love the hearts, but I can't see who's putting them up. So yeah, finally, over communication can be just as damaging as not enough communication. So if you're thinking of hiring a remote worker, or if you're thinking of, joining BetterPros and being a remote talent, you don't need to be allocating for your every minute of the day. I think that is something that has come from the working from home hybrid days where people think that someone might not be working, or the thousands of TikToks we see about like, oh, when I work remotely, but you don't need to do that. And that will actually cause more problems, because if you're, it's a full-time job to see what other people are doing. So if you're someone who just hired somebody to do a job, and what you're constantly just looking over their shoulder trying to see what they're doing, you're not going to get your job done, and you're going to be exhausted because the only thing that you're doing is checking in on somebody else. And if you're someone who's like working and I don't know, you're super scared because you've never done it before, and you're constantly annoying somebody else with like, oh, now I did this, now I did that, like just send an email. At the end of the day, there's trust to be had when you're far away. And so, but there's also like, for me, the top three things that you can do to have clear, good communication. I like this one. For me, weekly calls are a must. You shouldn't go a week without speaking to somebody. You can have 30-minute calls. You can have, I don't know, bi-weekly. I think it's a little bit too much, but you can have bi-weekly calls. You can have daily calls if you're a person who maybe doesn't like emails and just prefers to hop on like 5-minute calls. Or you can have cell phone calls. You can have video calls. Like, the world is yours. You can have whatever you want, but you must allocate time to actually get to talking, because not everything can be written on paper. Although emails and things like that are very important to set things in stone and not forget about things. Also, and this is something that I pride myself on, you need to set expectations as to what type of meeting you want. So if you want meetings where you're going to have to work on something, if you want meetings where you actually want to just bring updates. So I always find that if you set on like a one-on-one meeting, and maybe one party's like, oh, I'm going to bring this, and the other person's like, oh, I'm actually going to bring that, and then either one of the both parties doesn't actually get to talk about what they wanted to talk about, or the call tends to go overtime in what was going to be like a 30-minute call ends up being an hour and a half, and that's not productive for any of us. And if that keeps happening, then it's just like exhausting. And then quick updates might be needed for some projects. So you must maybe for some projects be like constantly chatting. And for example, if you work in marketing, or if you work on projects that are more like due date is coming up, but it's not always necessary, and it's not always nice, and it's not always helpful to be constantly chatting and chatting and chatting. It's good to have your spaces, and it's good to minimize certain communication and not over communicate things. And my pro tip is to state, and this is mostly for maybe people in the in architectures or engineers, state explicitly whether the meeting is going to be to get work done or to plan work that you then are going to do into different places. Because it's different to go into a call where you're like, hey, actually, we're going to work for an hour and a half and see this project together, and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to be working on this together. And it's different to be like, hey, let's hop on 30 minutes, let's see your tasks, let's see my task, and then we go on and work separately. And I think this is sometimes something that people overlook, going into the last point that I also made. It's important to set the goal for the meeting and make it understood if you're going to be working or if you're going to plan work. And also get off your chat and your WhatsApp and your email when you're on a meeting, because you need to be present. So, oh, I like this. I really like this phrase. So I put it very big. But like I said, if productivity is the engine, communication is a fuel. So if you want to be productive, you need to set your standards for communication so that you can actually, like I said, communicate when you need to and work when you need to. And I wanted to get like a pro tip, or a tip or a myth. I wanted to demystify something. Good English is really needed, and we always state it, but I feel like lately people are scared to use tools like Grammarly or ChatGPT. And when you need to get your point across on something that might be a bit complex, you tend to write bibles and paragraphs, and you are over explaining yourself. So don't be scared to use these tools, don't overuse them, but please don't be scared to use tools like Grammarly or ChatGPT, because again, a great level of English is always going to be needed, and you're going to have it if you are working across countries. But, I'm seeing more and more that people tend to be like, oh, I don't want to use ChatGPT because people are gonna know that I used it. And it's like, sometimes it's good that you used it. Sometimes it's good that you didn't send me like a 5 paragraph email and you could just summarize it into one because you were over explaining a bunch of things that didn't need to be over explained. So don't overuse them, but again, please don't be scared to use them because they're here for a reason, and we need to learn to work with AI and with these tools, and they are helpful. Just don't overuse them. Also, don't underuse them, because I was actually reading a newsletter that said, like, hey, people are underusing them and they're sending endless emails or endless chat things over explaining everything, when you can just ask Grammarly to summarize it and it's fine. No one's going to think you're a worse professional because you did that. So, how do we build trust remotely? I believe that you need to deliver quality work constantly. So, you need to be constant. You can't just disappear and reappear. You need to be constant with your work and with your word. Like I said before, you need to follow through on what you say. So, if deadlines are a certain day, or if you're going to get back to someone with feedback at a certain day, you need to be able to stick to your word. I know that, like I said, when you work on site, things might happen and you're like, yeah, I'll get that to you tomorrow and whatnot. But we're not having that constant communication. Your word becomes very important. And sometimes we take that for granted. So if feedback's coming on Tuesday, that feedback needs to be coming on Tuesday, or you need to actually give a valid reason why that's not happening, and allocate time to talk about that. Because if not, projects are never going to see the light of day, or they're never going to work smoothly or as smoothly as we want. And then show your presence through transparency, even when you're not online 24/7. So, like I said, if a deadline's coming up, maybe you are going to have to be present on a chat or or check your emails outside your working hours or outside your time zone. You're going to maybe have to start earlier or later. So show your presence, but that doesn't mean that you have to be working 15, 16 days, hour days. But you need to be present, and the clear channels of communications that have already been established. Next. Ooh, now it's my next break for wow. I can't believe there's no chat. It's so sad. So, adapting to global teams. I'm going to go back and talk about BetterPros again because they are my MVP, and I love how we work, and I love the things that we are able to achieve. So at BetterPros, we make sure that connections aren't left to chance. Like I said, we screen a lot of professionals monthly. We create a talent pool, and we want to find perfect matches because we don't believe that just anyone can work with anyone. But when you think globally, you don't just add more people to your team, you expand what your team can actually do, and you expand your chances of greatness, like we like to say. So for us, each team is different and has unique needs and working styles, and we make sure that our clients and our professionals match the best of our ability on those working styles and that difference that they might have to actually create potential and so that projects actually work. Also, different ideas create better problem solving. Like I said, this comes to my point that I made before. When you're working globally and across borders, maybe something that you saw from one client in Utah might be very interesting to another client who's like in France, and they maybe never heard of that before, or they weren't using it or implementing it. So it's great to have problem solving ideas that work across borders. And then different working styles foster adaptability and resilience, even when you're not online 24/7. I think that's kind of self explanatory, but the results speak for themselves. I think that from what we have seen, projects actually move faster, teams have been able to learn from each other, and solutions become smarter because they've been shaped by a variety of global insights. So the more opinions and the more people we bring to the table that have different backgrounds, the better, because we're actually learning from each other. And it's not just the same voice over and over again. So, like I said before, when you open the door to global collaboration, you stop thinking about the proximity and start thinking about your potential. Like I said, maybe the talent that you're looking for is not in your state, in your city, in your country. And when you get that out of the way, you can start seeing people for their potential and not for their location. And within that potential is also the potential that they have to grow and that they have to help you grow in your own dreams, in your own like projects. So think bigger, look beyond borders, and embrace collaboration. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how our talent success managers kind of guide both our clients and our professionals, and how they're, like I said, bridges, but they really have both interests in mind, because they help people and they understand each other, understand their needs, understand how they're going to work, understand what maybe hurdles might be. Like I say, they anticipate the challenges that they might face and try to help them before they even become a problem, because not everybody's perfect. We try to give them tools to communicate effectively. We try to give people chances to prove themselves and to put them in projects where we know that they're going to excel. And we help also clients be less, jump. Like, we're going to see a video in a minute where one of our clients says, you just need to jump in and embrace it. And so we try and make people jump in and embrace it, because it's a change. It's a big change. It's something that many people are scared to do or have never done before. They don't understand how they're going to make it work, because the old model of work, and it has been working well for so many years, but we need to embrace this change, because if not, we're going to be left behind. I think that's my opinion. And so, as a closing idea, I think what I wanted to say is that at BetterPros, we've seen how these connections can transform projects, careers, and even companies. Professionals have gained access to opportunities they have never imagined, developing new skills on being part of projects that they might never have thought of. Again, sometimes when you think locally, you just think about the people who are around you, or the things that are around you, or in your city, even your state, but you don't think much more than that. And professionals have gained opportunities that are global, like the webinar name is. Also, companies discover the talent that maybe they couldn't have found locally, and they gain fresh ideas, and they gain fresh insights, and they propel their work forward. And they actually, I remember someone told me once that because they have started working at BetterPros, they realized, like, hey, I can actually also take on projects from other parts of the, like, I'm also creating barriers around myself. It's not about just professionals, but it's also about people who have their own projects going on. And then also, teams become more adaptable, resilient, and creative by learning from each other. I think that's the most important thing. And yeah, whether you're a US company who's trying to build a stronger remote team, or you're a professional that wants to join BetterPros to gain global opportunities, the new world is where you belong, and we want to meet you. And actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, because I want to share a video. And I know that when you share, oh, I feel like a grandma. When you share this, you're not going to be able to share the audio. But I wanted to share with you guys a video from one of our clients that kind of sums up everything that we've been talking about today. And so I'm going to
So far, it's been a great experience. Hello, I'm Carlos, architect. I lived in Venice, California. I've been practicing architecture for the last 25 years. I've done work mainly in custom residential here in Los Angeles. During the pandemic, we saw a shift in how we work. I found myself sitting at the office without my employees. I learned that perhaps as much as I loved my employees being in the office, I didn't have to depend on site or in the office. I found BetterPros through a friend of mine. So it's been about 4 or 5 months working with BetterPros, and it's so far, it's been a great experience. I don't have to deal with the day-to-day management of people. I have a style of management that suits working with BetterPros, because I'd like people to have their freedom to do what they need to do and then come back and meet. In this case, I meet once, maybe twice a week with a BetterPro architect, and that we can set up the work for the next week and review what's been done for the previous week. That allows me to focus myself on different projects at the same time. So it's a really natural flow of work back and forth. And again, it's working really well. Well, BetterPros has been great in sort of shepherding the process of adjusting my work to working remotely. That started with the interview process of potential candidates, with the added benefit that the people that I was interviewing had already been vetted by BetterPros. I feel very good and positive about the experience. I'm learning myself a lot. It suits me very well. BetterPros feels very personal, very in tune with our needs. I think BetterPros has a feel of not being a big corporate entity that you just become a number to them. You are a client and treated in such a way with care, respect, and so I think that goes a long way to feeling like you're a person, not just some sort of account. The same thing I tell everybody when we're standing at the edge of the ocean and the water seems to be cold. It's just jump in. You may have a shock in the beginning, but then you will realize that it's actually a good thing. I think it's really a matter of trying it out, seeing how it works, how it fits, and then making your decision once you gave yourself, I would say, 3 to 6 months to feel what it's like to work from abroad. And also you develop a personal relationship with the person that you're working with. And just like you do in your office, it's no different in that way. Given the freedom that they need also is important. I think we all like that. And personally, we all want that autonomy, but also knowing that we work for somebody. I work for my clients, and BetterPros is providing work for myself. I mean, work is not just about generating a bunch of lines in a drawing. It's also about, we're living while we're working. And so you might as well have a pleasant, good experience with whoever you're working with.
Well, I think that kind of sums up what we talked about today. If you want to hear a lot more client testimonials, we have them on our YouTube page. I don't know why we have them on our YouTube page, and we'll make sure to get those to you. Actually, there is a Q&A place, and we figured it out. It's like, I think, an update on Google Meet. So if you go to the 9 dots on your right, you're going to be able to find a Q&A section where you can ask any questions. So if you guys have any questions, you can ask them there. Let's see. Bitty bitty. Okay, something's coming on now. Do you have examples of more flexible relationships with professionals? We do. We actually have a variety of more relationships with professionals. Some people work on a more flexible basis where projects are just sent to them and there's minimal communication. Sometimes you have somebody who's full-time working on site, like kind of with the team at the same time, and we just kind of cater to what you need and what a professional is willing to do. So we have plenty of examples, and I would recommend you go to our site and have a call with one of our sales representatives, and they're going to be able to give you much more clear examples and kind of help you figure out what can work for you in the best way. I love that they all say anonymous. How would you recommend to go about an onboarding project? Thumbs up. What I would recommend is, like I said, set it clear. We have an onboarding process of our own, but if you're someone who's like trying to hire remotely and you're like, hey, I know that BetterPros already does an onboarding process, but how would you recommend I, as a person, go about my relationship with this other person that is starting to work with me? I would say, like, again, just take your time to set whatever tools you want to work with, whatever form of communication you feel comfortable with. Just take your time to know the person and see what's going to work for you. I think that sometimes we just want to get on to work, and we forget that setting standards and setting things in place is actually what's going to help us in the long run to be better. So just take that time to see what you want to do and how you want to communicate that to the other person, and kind of see what changes need to be made. Because again, sometimes you might feel like, oh, I love emails, and then you're like, hey, actually I have 1,000 emails on my inbox. I would much rather hop on a 10-minute call with you every other day and just get updates there. So everything can change and everything is very flexible. You just need to start to think what's going to work for you. And yeah, that's my answer. Okay, so let's see if any other questions pop up. But if not, you're gonna be free to go. Oh my God, we're almost just in time. I feel so proud of myself. I was scared I was gonna go over or under. I didn't know which one. I was gonna go one of either, but no, okay, so I think again, if you have any more questions, you can go to our site. You're gonna get an email with all of this information. So thank you everybody who came. I'm so sorry to everyone. I got a lot of emails saying that many people couldn't make it, but we're gonna have it on YouTube. You're gonna be able to watch it again. You can enter our website, betterpros.com, if you wanna learn more information about us. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining, and it's been a pleasure. I'm so sorry that the chat didn't really work, but it's been a pleasure. I mean, thank you everybody, and we'll see you on our next webinar. That's probably going to be the last one of the year. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a really nice day.